Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of GHB Tempest Trial tier list update. This time we'll be taking a look at Bridal Hinata and Fallen Ashnard. Before we start, however, I want to point out a few things about the tier list, since, of course, when I laid out the guideline, that was about 2 years ago, and I know some people may have some misconception as to how the tier lists work. This is not a tier list based on who is the best character, but who is the best project. Okay? The difference here is very simple. If a unit like, say, let's just go with the example that has been used in my Discord, really. Let's say not Inat, what am I saying? Fallen Takumi is like in the second to last tier, whereas Spring Loki is 4 tier above. Do you think that there's this much of a gap between the two units in terms of power? No, that's completely inaccurate. What this tier list aims to is to talk about what a unit can do, what is the niche of said unit, and also if there's something that completely renders the unit obsolete. A good example is, well, Fallen Takumi. If you compare Fallen Takumi to, say, Norn, you realize that Norn beats him in every single stat. Skadi is a very gimmicky weapon that basically does nothing for you for the most part, and only works once instead of every 2 turns like it should. So, as a result, you get a unit that has no purpose in ever being built because said unit is just completely outclassed by another unit. Spring Loki, however, is a flying, a flying bow unit. Those types of units are very rare in the game. There's, I believe, 4, which are Wings of Fate Inoka, Summer Takumi, Summer Lin, and Spring Loki. I might be missing one, but I believe that's all of them, okay? That's 4 units. Have you realized what happens with the other 3? Norn's a 3 to 4 star. That's why when a 3 to 4 star completely shits all over a GHB Tempest Trial tier list, which requires months of grails, I don't see the point in ever building said unit. But Spring Loki's only competition are 2 seasonals and a 5-star exclusive. Do you see the difference here? Already there, Loki brings something that most people will not be able to build to plus 10, so that makes it a lot easier for her to actually bring something new. 2, she's also a tank, which the other 3 do not do. Takumi is more like an all-offense character. Lin is more like a dedicated armor killer that is the wrong color. And then you have Inoka, who's actually pretty solid now that sturdy impact is now a thing, unlike when she was first released. But she's mostly an armor killer yet again. So, Loki being a tankier unit brings something new to the table, and, unlike every infantry, I can't really compare Norn to Loki, because Loki can bring ground orders, air orders, guidance, flyer guidance, aerobatics, flyer formation. All of these skills are stuff that she can run, but Norn will never be able to run, so that brings her to have a niche. And aerobatics into bonds gives a lot of flexibility for Loki. I also said on the banner she was first, or not the banner, but the first tier list update I've made of the character, I've already said that she was barely at S-. Or whatever tier she's in. I think it's A+ now? I'm not sure, but essentially, the tier she was in, she was very shaky in said tier. So, you may consider her a tier lower, or the tier she's at. It's fine, okay? My point is just very simple, okay? If a unit brings nothing to the table that a 3 to 4 star cannot fulfill, or if it brings nothing that a 3 to 4 star can fulfill, well, what's the point, right? So, yeah, just thought I'd point this out so people would actually understand, because I know I had a conversation with someone that I felt like I was talking to a wall, and he was completely misunderstanding everything. So, anyway, with that said, let's talk about the units themselves. First up is Hinata. Now, if you've seen my video about Oboro, or really the whole Bridal banner, you know already this weapon is trash. But I'm gonna repeat myself. The main reason why this weapon is bad is because this type of effect, where you get a charge when you get hit and it's multi-phase, is really only good when paired up with a secondary effect, which is cooldown -1. The reason why this is important is Rinka, Owain, those are the two units that has this effect. Shannon should also have had that effect, but I guess they decided that was not good, that it was just not worth investing in, which was great. Anyway, the point is, the reason why the cooldown -1 is so important is because if you attack and you proc, and then you get hit and then you proc again, this requires 2 cooldown skills, okay? You cannot do this with, well, you can do this with Moonbow, Glimmer, Ruptured Sky, and Noontime, but it's relatively not very great, is the problem. Because you don't really gain much damage from it. However, if you have cooldown -1, especially with the type of defense this guy has, well, you'd be able to just proc Bonfire, get hit, Bonfire again, and that would actually give him a very strong niche. He doesn't have that, therefore, this weapon is not very helpful overall. It's the same problem as with Oboro. And the other problem is the fact that, yes, it's multi-phase, but like I said, this is the player phase aspect, and he fails at it because he doesn't have cooldown -1. What do you think happens on enemy phase once you realize that the only type of unit that can use said weapons are sword and axes? Hint, hint, Brave Lucina. I think I've said my point on that one. It's just overall a very iffy weapon. It doesn't bring enough to the table, and it's just really awkward to work with. As for the rest of his kit, well, this is a problem also for Ashnard, but he brings literally no new fodder for free-to-play players. Close Guard was available at 4-star on Death Knight, Attack Death Bond was available at 4-star on Rudger. To be fair, Attack Death Bond is a really good skill, so having multiple of it doesn't really hurt, but Close Guard can be a lot more, I don't want to say situational, because it really isn't. It's the better one of the two. The Sting Guard is the crap one. But even then, it's kind of like a, okay, I'm not going to 5-star unit for this skill. So, whatever, right? Now, moving on to the first merge. First merge increases Hinata's total stat by 1 HP, 1 attack, and 1 defense, which, while not completely terrible, does not really help him all that much. The problem is that his speed is a bit shaky, but also his competition is very fierce. Through the last, I don't know if it's been already 6 months, probably more than 6 months actually, but throughout the past we have gotten units like Ross, Echidna, Libra, who are able to do very similar things to him because they have IVs. In a lot of cases, it's really difficult for me to bring a point of Hinata, and you'll see this very clearly right now. Let's talk about comparison. As you can see, if you compare Hinata to Ross, Bars will be a bit later, but if you compare Hinata to Ross, same attack, almost the same HP, 4 less speed, and that 4 speed does matter a lot if you want a lot of versatility on your unit. Only 5 more death, and he's behind by 3 res on top of all of this. Overall, Hinata just kind of is a worse unit than Ross. The main thing Hinata really has is being a good tank, in the same vein as Lucas. In a sense that, very min-max tank, very good at dealing with certain threats in Arena Assault, but at the same time, if only one of those types of units are needed, I would suggest working on Bartray instead of Hinata, because Bartray can be 4-star plus 10 for a lot cheaper than 2,700 grails, and Bartray also has a pref that is effective against armors, which means that even if you have to deal with, say, Legendary Tiki, you'll be able to one-shot her anyway, which is just a lot more helpful than Hinata as an AA check. As far as Ross goes, Ross is just kind of the best axe unit that you can really invest in, because he has so much versatility. You can go rest plus, you can go speed plus, you can go attack plus. It's really up to you. Like for example here, if I went attack plus instead, yes, I would be behind by 5 def as well as 1 res, but I would also be ahead by 4 attack and speed, making you completely better offensively. As far as defensively is concerned, yeah, you are behind in defense and res, but really not by all that much. Ross is just kind of superior, and the best part about him is that he's a 3 to 4 star. He does not cost 2.7k Grail, which is about 9 months of Tempest Trial. Oh, if only. Of Aether Raids, so yeah. Burst is another unit worth considering also between the two, because his weapon gives him 4 across the board. It does have recoil, but you can actually make up for it very easily. The point is, if you have 4 across the board here, you almost have the same HP, you have 2 more attack, you have 10 more speed, you have 6 less def, and you have the same res. This is another 3 to 4 star unit, and his weapon also has Wrath, so you can combo it into another Wrath, get hit, with Brave Lucina of course, and then just proc Noontime, with an extra 20 damage. So even then, the recoil you take will not be too bad, and the recoil is really good at putting you back into Wrath range. Another thing you can do is Time Pulse Wrath with Bonfire. At that point you basically have a special of like 20 damage inflated to 40. Which again is something Hinata cannot do, or Ross for that matter, which makes Barst a better investment than Hinata in my opinion, and Ross also a better investment than Hinata. So of course, since Hinata is completely outmatched, I am just simply not even gonna give him a build. There's no point in me showing a build of a unit that, I mean, like any build I can really showcase on Hinata, Ross will just do better. That's just how it is. If you just want him as a one-off for say AA, all I'm going to say is just use him with Quick Riposte. Quick Riposte, Slaying, call it a day with Bonfire. There's really not much you can do with him, and that's really his biggest downfall. Now moving on to the big boy himself, Ashnard. Now again, just like Hinata, no fodder to be had here. The Sten Def 3 was already available at 5 star on Garen, and even Attack Wave 3 was available at 4 star on Delphia. If anything, the Sten Def 3 should have been available at 4 star, but whatever. It's not even that great a skill anyway. So, Gurgurant. Oh boy, Gurgurant. It's a really good weapon, but it does run into one problem, and it's really Ashnard's stat line. Ashnard's stat line is very awkward because he has 21 speed, which, by the way, does not make any sense. In Path of Radiance, he was one of the hardest character to double. It was not even close, okay? The only character that could effectively double him, at least unless you pump any character with like a lot of items, was Ike and the Royal Lagoose. Anything else? No. Do not even hope of seeing that happening. The dude was just extremely quick. And this is hard mode Ashnard, which is the version that once it dies, it just revives with the medallion and just fucks you over. Look, that version is even faster. You would struggle to double with Ike. I do not understand why his speed is this low. And it really sucks because if he had, like, say, let's just say 4 less defense, 1 less res put into speed, you could do some nasty stuff with him. Absolutely nasty stuff. But, yeah, it's definitely more on the awkward side with this bit of speed. Gurgurant is a good weapon, but because he has so little speed, he's reliant on Quick Riposte, and we all know how that goes. The second you're under 80% HP, oh boy, you are in trouble, because then you don't double, you miss kills constantly, and yikes. Still, he's pretty decent when it works. The problem is just when it works. There are ways to deal with that, but, well, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's talk about the first merge. The first merge gives an extra point in attack, def, and HP. This is Hinata all over again. Honestly, it would have been better to be in res than defense, but oh well, there's not much you can do about it. Or speed for that matter, but yeah, that was just not gonna happen with 21 speed. Still, if you use any point of comparison, the main one you can use is Fiora. And I know what some people will say immediately. Man, her def is a lot worse. Man, her attack is not as good. Man, oh, they have about the same res. The thing that you have to note here is that there's one skill to keep mind of. And that one skill is the reason why I consider them to be about equal. Pegasus Flight. For all of Ashnard's best part, he actually struggled in the simplest thing, which is the fact that his speed is too trash for Pegasus Flight. If his speed had like 5 more points, okay, you could actually somehow invest in Pegasus Flight. But the way he is, I mean, like, look, if you have a buff in speed, the enemy with 39 or more speed, Pegasus Flight is not going to affect. Fiora actually has a speed stat, which means that she can actually use Pegasus Flight. So, you know, with a buff in res, you have 42 res. As long as the enemy has 28 res or less, you literally have 7 more attack, def, and res. All of a sudden, you basically have the def and res switch on Ashnard, and, you know, the attack is basically very similar. And with Carrot Cudgel, the difference between Gurgurinn and Carrot Cudgel is not even all that much, because your defense and attack should be about the same. The res get caught up a little because the enemy lose 5 attacks, so you gain basically 5 def and res. Which, great, but even then, they end up becoming very similar. The difference, the main difference here is that Ashnard can support and Fiora does not need support. If that makes sense. Fiora needs very little support to function. Ashnard needs a lot more support to function. And really, that's the main part. They're both good, which is kind of sad to say considering Fiora does not even have a pref. But yes, they're kind of both good. The problem is just that Ashnard's speed is just that terrible. But yeah, let's move on to builds. So the first of 3 pages of build is very simple. This one should not come as a surprise. Quick Riposte mirror stance with Aether, obviously with Brave Lucina support, because otherwise you're not proccing shit. With this you hit 73 attack, you also hit... You hit 73 attack as well as 54 defense and 50 res, which is pretty solid overall. The problem, again, is that the second you're under Quick Riposte, it's kind of hard to go back in Quick Riposte. And you will be missing kill here and there, which is really frustrating. Mystic Boost and Ignis is the other one that's more like set up on doing more damage. But because you're doing more damage, we don't have any sustain anymore outside of Mystic Boost. So really, it's up to you which one you prefer. The right is bulkier, the left has sustain. For like, even if you don't proc Aether. So yeah. As for the second page of set, this is more the aggressive route you can go with it. Do keep in mind, I'm gonna cut this out here. I'm gonna start with the left side. Keep in mind with this, you don't have aerobatics. Aerobatics would indeed help you quite a bit. Mystic Boost can also provide you sustain. Both of those are valid option, by the way, just keep that in mind. The idea with this one is to actually fix your speed. Keep in mind I'm only hitting 46 speed instead of 47, but you can still use Dragon Flower to hit 47. I just don't like really pushing the idea of having to have Dragon Flowers on every unit. So I just don't really show it, but it's an option you can do. So here you're basically hitting 46 def, 46 res, which is pretty solid. With Bonfire that means 23 damage proc. As far as your attack and speed goes, 34, 41, 46. So you have 46 speed, def, res, basically. And your attack is at, well, 69. Nice. And for all two people who think, hey, Pegasus Flight could work on this, Pegasus Flight only takes your visible speed, and your visible speed is very much trash. As long as the enemy would have 42 speed or more, you're basically boned. So, yeah. Set on the right is more of a Gale Force set. Do keep in mind this one is pretty awkward. Actually, no, it's not that awkward, but yes, you end up with 46 speed again. Peril Parasol does require the enemy to be debuffed, so similar to Narshan, you would need to be in a team that can support you, because by yourself you cannot make this work. Except with stuff like Attack Smoke, Attack Ploy, and so on and so forth. He does have the res for it. It's just kind of awkward because you can't really run Ploy and Smoke at the same time unless you give up your Seal slot, which is required for Gale Force, so it doesn't really work, does it? But yes, if you have someone with, say, Ploy, you can actually make this work pretty well. Do keep in mind you don't have any enemy phase with this encounter, however, if you do this. Still, if the enemy has a debuff up, you're basically looking at, well, 73 attack and 46 speed, which is pretty solid. As far as def are concerned, well, what you see is what you get, 46, 41. It's overall pretty okay, and yeah, that's kind of the problem. You mostly rely on others to function. As for set 3, this is more defensive base, Heart's Blade plus and attack speed bond as well as attack speed bond again. So, keep in mind, Heart's Blade gives you 3 speed, okay? Or 3 across the board if you're next to someone. So in reality, you're getting 15 speed off of your set here. So you still have 46 speed, again, flowers. But yes, you end up having 77 attack, 46 speed, which is pretty solid. As far as def and res are concerned, you're looking at 49 def and 48 res, which also makes you fairly bulky. This is also using noontime, so you have some kind of sustain to deal with this. Keep in mind, if you think the sustain is not needed, just go for Moonbow. Pretty simple, right? Set on the right is more of a... It's kind of similar to the first wave of set I showcased. This is mostly 4 damage, but with sustain with Mystic Boost to make up for the fact that you don't have any sustain otherwise. So here you're basically looking, again, at 46 def, 46 res, as well as 44 speed. Keep in mind, the set is borderline requiring you to have Brave Lucina, as Brave Lucina will provide you the last bit of speed you will need. All of these can work really well with Brave Lucina, by the way. Just want to keep that... Just want for you to keep that in mind. And another one is not something I typically do, but I figured I'd show you this, because that's the difference of having an extra 4 speed or not. This is something you can do in AR only, with the support of Peony as well as Air. Yeah, this is where Pegasus Flight can actually work in tandem with Speed Ploy. The idea is quite simple. You Speed Ploy the enemy, and then you can proc Pegasus Flight on them. Here they would need 48 or more speed to even not be able to proc Pegasus Flight. So, already there, you're at a good spot, and you actually are using Gargarint. The 4-speed Peony provides is the key here. Keep also in mind that you're also going to get 30 speed through Peony's weapon. So, I forgot to actually... Or actually, I think I actually tried to do the left one without buff, but I fucked up. This is +6 across the board, if that's not obvious. This is also with Summoner support, which again is something I don't do. This is also with Flowers, which is again something I would not do normally. The idea, however, is that you can actually use the weapon with this, which gives you such a huge edge that it's actually worth talking about, in my opinion. So, essentially here, due to Pegasus Flight, as long as the enemy has 37 or less res, which, let's be honest, that's really easy. you basically get an extra 7 attack, or 7 attack def and res, which combos into Gurgurin's 5 attack def res, because you reduce the enemy's attack and def by 12. And that's with this encounter, so you're basically looking at 79 attack and 64 def, 63 res. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting, and Speedploy will just about hit any unit that are quick enough to prevent Pegasus Flight from working, unless you find for some reason a unit with like 50 speed that also has 55 res or some shit, which I don't know how you would, but let's just say that's the case. Then, I mean, typically they won't have any def, so you'll just one-shot them. But yes, this essentially means 79 attack, 40 speed. Obviously, if you really want to make this work as well as you can, Brave Lucina works really well in tandem with this. Noontime is there because you don't really need that much more damage. 79 attack is just huge in general. And, well, if you still think that Noontime is not needed, Moonbow is still an option. Brave Lucina will also fix up your speed, because let's just say you could just run speed, one drive speed, and one, let's say, drive attack, and there you go. You're basically at, 82 attack, 46 speed. Actually, wait. No, you're at 85 attack, 46 speed. So yeah. At that point, he's really good, but the problem is it only really works in AR. I just thought I would actually at least mention this, because it's actually quite insane what you can do with that much stats. And it also really showcased how much 4 points of speed would have fixed him up at high merges and high investment. Alas, this is not something most people will be able to do. But, hey, if you really like Ashnard, there you go. You have a place where you can absolutely use him and dumpster the enemy with it. The main problem with this is that you'll typically be hit by shrines a lot, but there's not much you can do here, really. And that's about all I had to say with builds. Now, let's move to the tier list. So I've changed Narshan's spot because he now has a refine. He went from C tier to A plus tier. The reason why Narshan is an A plus tier now is very quite simple. There's not much units that can even compare when it comes down to if he's in the right team. The main problem, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that he has to be in a specific team, it would probably be S-. But since he doesn't, or rather, since he does, he is going to be stuck in A+. That's just kind of how it is. Being stuck in a team you don't provide anything for is kind of iffy to begin with. But his weapon is very solid, and, Michaelis is kind of a more damaging version of Narshan. He has less bulk overall, to some extent, but he gets a Wodao effect to make up for it, which allows him to use 2 cooldown special more effectively. So, I do think they're both kind of fit in the same tier. Narshan is the more bulky version that can actually sustain itself, and Michaelis is more like the damaging version that can actually do good damage. Hinata is an A-, no surprises there. As I said at the start of the video, this is a tier that's based on how good a project is, not exactly how good a unit is. Because, hey, look at it this way, right? Hilger is to some extent a better Hinata. Ilger is also a worse Libra / Echidna. That's why she's not in A+ or higher. Units that are A+ or higher are typically the type of unit that are actually worth building, or don't have a unit that does everything they can do better, or and so on. And like, for example, Minerva versus Narshan. Minerva is kind of like, or at least TSA Minerva, not base Minerva. She's kind of like a weird mix of Michaelis and Narshan. Because in a way, she's basically an offensive and defensive version at the same time. So obviously she's going to be higher. She's a lot better than working on Narshan or Michaelis, because she just englobes both. If that makes sense. But yes. Hinata has no reason to be built, so A-. That's really just what it is. And Ashnard is on the same tier as Fiora because, while yes, you can make him work as an extremely good tank in AR, the fact of the matter is, while yes, you can make him hit over 65 def and res, it's only on light season, and it's only if you plus 10 him summoner support flowers and so on and so forth. That's just a lot of very specific support that not everyone are going to be willing to give. So obviously I'm not going to put him like S- or S tier or S plus tier, there's just no point. Still, I'll say one thing. He looks better than Fiora, looks-wise. So there's that. But yes, that's really the main difference with Pegasus Flight. This may change in the future, by the way, as Wyvern Flight might very much be a thing in the next banner, as it's most likely going to be Radiant Dawn. At least that's what I'd expect, since we're done with seasonals now. I mean, I don't see any reason for it to be anything but Radiant Dawn, as we're still missing Shinon, as well as Jill. It just feels obvious that this should be the very next thing that we get, but that's just me. But yeah, not much else to say here. Ashnard can be quite the beast, but at the same time, he requires a lot of care. Narshan is pretty solid, and Hinata is a pointless addition. That's really the best way I can describe him, because he brings no fodder that we don't already have, and he's not a very great unit, so oh well. But yeah, in conclusion, hey, Ashnard is a good one-off, if anything, because this is another thing I should have mentioned when talking about Ashnard. His weapon is a support weapon. It is not just for himself, so you can use it with other characters. Sadly, the main character you really want to pair him up with is Tarja. Tarja is also, well, red, which is kind of a problem. But Tarja also does speed down, so you can do like -9 attack on the enemy, -5 def, -4 speed, which is extremely solid to combo in for a physical unit. But, oh well. And at the same time, Tarja can kind of fix the main issue that, you know, this boy runs into. Does not allow him to run Pegasus Flight like Peony does, but it's still pretty solid. Overall, you could say that he's a good cheerleader for Arena, but cheerleading in Arena is not all that helpful anymore. At least that's how I feel. He's basically a better Gordon as far as cheerleading goes, because Gordon, the best way to describe him is, he's a good unit if you fight with him. If you are not fighting with him, that typically means that you are parking him behind the unit you want to tank with, so, you know, the unit you want to tank with gets the benefit of removing 4 attack and speed, 4 attack and defense from the enemy. But here's the problem with that, right? Ashnard gives you more stats, and Gordon has a shit speed stat. If he has to get sniped by someone, who the hell do you think is going to survive? The dude with like 50 defense and res? Or the dude that has good defense but no res? And no speed? Yeah. Ashnard will typically do that better. There is a difference of like almost 20 BST between the two. Actually, no, I think it is 20 BST between the two. And Ashnard doesn't have speed -5 on top of everything, so that already helps as well. But yeah. With that said, I think I've said all I wanted to say about this. And the next video should be the Legendary Banner review. Talking about Nagi with the most unfitting art style on a character I've ever seen, but... well, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I'm gonna leave it there. I'll be seeing you all later, y'all. Have a nice rest of the day. See ya!